Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is May 9th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, as you guys might have seen, I posted a picture or pictures of my weekend project, so I didn't have time to make videos. But I think also the last couple of weeks, it wasn't really important for me to be making videos because there haven't been that many crazy events or movements. Not that the war is uneventful because there's always news happening every single day, but we can clearly see that the Russian offensive is stalled. In terms of Bakhmut, I don't really see the sense of making updates anymore. The Ukrainians control still a small relative part of the city, but you can see that the tides are turning very quickly. One thing is that Prigozhin, as you guys might have seen last week, he's been complaining a lot, saying that he's going to pull out his forces out of Bakhmut, and he says, no, we're going to actually stay, just basically threatening the Russian MOD because he's not getting the support necessary to take the entirety of the city. And that's a win already that we're on May 9th and that the Russians and Wagner still hasn't captured Bakhmut, a medium-sized city. To me, it's just unbelievable, right? And everybody believed at the start of this war that Russia was the second greatest military power. And now here we are, still talking about Bakhmut almost 10 months in, and the Russians are still incapable of capturing the entirety of the city. And even if they capture it next week or tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Ukraine has achieved its objective at defending the city for the entirety of winter, which was brutal. And it came at a great cost on the Ukrainian side, but clearly the Russians paid far more than the Ukrainians. So that's my little summary of what happened in Bakhmut. I'm not going to go over the map today because, again, it's uneventful. The Russian offensive is stalled, and I'm going to start making updates once the Ukrainians go on the counteroffensive. We're going to start seeing that by the sheer amounts of videos and confirmations of villages and towns being captured by the Ukrainians and the intensity of fighting, which we're currently not seeing. Now, today is May 9th. It's a huge day in Russia. Since Putin came in power, he turned this into a very grand event, right? Victory Day. Every single year on May 9th on the Red Square, there's these massive military parades. However, this year is very sad because you can see that Russia only managed to pull out one tank for this parade, and it was an 80-year-old tank, the T-34. That was the only tank that made an appearance. Additionally, there was no aviation or infantry fighting vehicles, and this was the shortest parade of all time. So that really is a sign of desperate times in Russia right now, as they need all these new modern tanks and modern IFVs and jets on the front lines. They just can't spare even one or two T-72s for this parade. So this was not surprising because obviously Russia can't even produce a dozen of these T-72s and T-90s per month, right? Even if they can claim that we're producing 400, 500 per year, if not more. We all know that the systemic corruption in Russia is atrocious, and that they're even lucky if they can produce 5 of them per month of these T-90s because they're so reliant on Western parts, and also because, well, everybody wants to pocket in the profits. So in reality, when they're supposed to be producing 20 a month, well, they can only produce 5 because everybody needs to go through and grab a little share of the revenue from the budget. So that was an interesting victory day in Russia. And if you ask me, this was a poor man's parade. So this is not something you would expect or you would have seen 2 years ago, right? There was a video that was comparing what was going on 2 years ago in 2021 in terms of the sheer scale of the parade. And they had these T-14 Armadas, and they had the T-90s, and they had, the BTR-82As, the most modern iterations, even the Terminators, whereas now they don't even have planes flying. So as you can see, I really like this picture because this kind of displays the military state of Russia right now. But another thing I want to talk about is don't be fooled. Don't think that because, Russia's running out of tanks and they're now pulling out T-55s, the war is going to be over soon. The Russians made it very clear that they're okay to go until the very end, right? And we should not be under the impression that because now they're falling to World War II era weapons to fight against the Ukrainians, that they're somehow going to come to the conclusion that we need to stop this war. They've made it very clear that they want to go until the very end, right? And even if that means sacrificing millions of Russian people, they're going to go through it. And that's the default perspective we need to have here. Now, this is kind of a positive, but also I have a negative perspective on this. So I've read this article, I swear 2-3 months ago, back in February, where Britain was saying that they were considering to send long-range missiles. And now there's another one that comes out again, saying that Britain is about to send long-range missiles to Ukraine. Now, according to this article, Britain and a group of European allies are hoping, the word here, hoping, not expecting, or 100% certain that they're going to supply Ukraine with long-distance cruise missiles, similar in range to those that the US has so far refused to supply Kyiv. And again, the reasoning, which is so frustrating, is that they don't want to escalate this war, right? And again, I think this is the biggest game changer, because look at how when Ukraine got the HIMARS missiles last year, back in the summer, around, I think, mid-June to end of June, along with the howitzers, the M777s, it really changed the tide for Ukraine. Ukraine was really getting pushed back, right? Back in last year, around May and June, it was Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, where the Russians were trying desperately to crush the Ukrainians there. And they managed to capture that city after really brutal months of fighting. And some were saying that they were expending about using up 20 to 30,000 shells, if not more, per day, the Russians, in terms of artillery. It was brutal for the Ukrainians. And only when the HIMARS systems came and they were able to hit those ammunition depots that were very close to the front lines, and those bases and those logistical supply lines, where the Russians were incapable of pushing further, and they actually started retreating. And so the HIMARS systems played a very crucial part in allowing the Ukrainians to pick up the momentum for what we saw the eventual successful counteroffensive in Kharkiv and Kherson. So now the Russians obviously learned from their mistakes. They're not going to be putting, tons of ammunition and missiles super close to the front lines, and so they've retreated very, very far away, away from the HIMARS range. And so now Ukrainians can't really hit them anymore. And so they need the range of between 150 to 300 kilometers to be able to hit them, which, obviously they can't, because they don't have those weapons. And they've been begging for them for as long as I can remember, and the West is still very reluctant to provide them. And if they do, it's in very small quantities, right? If they have, but I don't think so. So it's frustrating to keep, seeing these articles come around and the partners, Western partners, make these claims, but it's so easy. Just give them, and Ukraine's going to do the rest, right? This is going to be super important for this counteroffensive to be successful as well, right? These long-range missiles are going to give the possibility for the Ukrainians to exhaust the Russians, their logistical lines, of their ammunitions. If they don't have any ammunition, they have nothing to fight with. So there you go. Now, for the positive post of the day, so obviously the celebrations, the Victory Day celebrations, are not only happening in Moscow, or the largest cities of Russia. It's also happening in this small state of Navra. And Navra shares a border between Estonia and Russia. And as you guys may or may not know, the Estonians absolutely despise, and they could be the biggest Russophobics because they've hated their occupation under the Soviet Union. Anyways, you can see that on one side of the river, on the Russian side, they've put this massive scene of, Victory Day celebrations, right? Just to put it, sticking to the Estonians' faces. And the Estonians calmly, just as a pure Estonian would do, they just, responded on their very, calm way by putting a massive poster on their castle on the other side of the river, by indicating that Putin is a war criminal, just to remind the Russians on whose side they are, the criminal side. And so I thought that was really positive. And again, the Baltic states, including Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, they've been some of the biggest supporters of Ukraine. And so without their help, Ukraine would have been in a much much worse position. So thank you for our, Baltic brothers who are standing hand in hand with the Ukrainians and providing all the support they can, despite the fact that they're tiny, countries, right? They're not massive by any means, but they're doing everything they can to support Ukraine. So again, I tip my hat off to the Estonian people, the Lithuanians, the Polish people as well, the Latvians. They're doing a hell of a job to help Ukraine win this war. So that's it for today's video, guys. Again, thank you for your support. I will be making more frequent videos in the future as the counteroffensive picks up momentum. We're going to start seeing a lot of activity on the Ukrainian side, and I'm going to start making more videos once that moment arrives. So thank you again for your support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you, and take care. Bye.